Welcome, welcome everyone to this Euronews event. I'm Gerardo Fortuna, I'm an agri-food journalist here at Euronews. Today we'll be talking about what happened roughly 1 year ago. There were farmers out of the streets, not just in Brussels, all across Europe. They were asking for fair income, something against the obsessive regulation. In a nutshell, their livelihood was at risk. There have been some responses since then. The evaluation of the responses is still undergoing. This morning, there was another important piece of this path to respond to this protest. We're going to be talking about that, but the circle is not yet fully closed, although it's starting to come together. We're going to talk about this with very key players of the agricultural lawmaking in Brussels. And we're going to start with one of the main one, the Commissioner for Agriculture, Christoph Hansen, that I invite you to join me on this stage.
Good evening.
Busy day, Commissioner.
Like all the days here.
Yeah.
It's a more visible day maybe today.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, but you survived.
Yes.
Can you confirm that this is the last thing you're going to do and then you go to sleep?
No, I still have some work to do up there in my tower.
Okay. I understand. So, big day. First, I want to ask you, what were the first reactions? You're just coming from the parliament. So, what were the first reaction on this package that you presented? It's a package on the simplification. You're gonna can you introduce it? And what were the main reactions to this?
Well, I met several colleagues of the European Parliament to discuss. I was not in the Agriculture Committee. There was one of my representatives from the DG that was there, but nonetheless, I think now the document is public. I think it is well received so far. Of course, there are now questions because the document is new. Some will analyze if this is in line with the environmental ambitions. I believe it is so. But it is positive received that it came so quickly as well. I think we have our duty to deliver results, to make life to farmers easier and make them as well gain again more enthusiasm to do the work, because that is of course a huge problem that we are facing, that currently less and less farmers want to start this job again, and that we have an aging population. So we need, let's say, to give hope and fun as well back to our farmers to start this job. And they don't want to do it to fill in papers and sit after long working hours for hours and hours still after the behind the computer, or paperwork to do.
There have been already some reporting. There's a very nice article on Euronews that incidentally I wrote about this package.
I will read it later on then.
Yeah. You can tell me what you think about. But can you explain why this simplification approach matter to you? And also if you can highlight one thing that we really shouldn't miss, because I mean it's a set of measures. There are a lot of measures. So,
well, first of all, I think you mentioned it before. We had last year the farmers taking it to the streets as well here next to the Parlement, because they had a lot of things that were not going wrong in a very tense geopolitical situation as well. But of course, under this there is a lot that we can do domestically as well. So we delivered already in my second week a package on the Common Markets Organization and the Unfair Trading Practices Directive to respond to one of the farmers' concerns: better prices for their high-value products. And this is now the next step. We have in February presented the vision for the future of agriculture and food, which is the pathway to the future of agriculture. It is not yet a legislative text, but this simplification package was announced there. It is a further response as well to the farming community, but as well the member states. So we have as well had a study where we asked more than 27,000 farmers to give us feedback what is bothering them in this current common agriculture policy. But as well we got suggestions from the member states, and this is what we worked with. And I have to say, what we got from the farmers, it's not just the common agriculture policy. So that was very clear today as well. There will be a second simplification by the end of the year looking at as well at other policy areas that need to contribute as well, because what is felt as administrative burden on the farm is not only CAP, there's as well environmental legislation, health and sanitary legislation, often as well national or regional legislation. So I think everybody needs to contribute to cut down this bureaucracy, and that is important. What in this package I think is very key, we have simplified for the very small farms so that we alleviate burden for them, because otherwise they will not even participate correctly in the system. So this is something where we made simplification. We simplified for organic producers mainly as well, because they are on some points green by definition, so some of the conditionality they fulfill it anyhow, so it doesn't make sense that they declare on two sides.
There are also some rules for when it comes to organics, some rules in the common agricultural policy, some rules in the actual framework. So there was also an attempt to simplify this overlapping.
Exactly, to cut down the overlaps without reducing the ambitions. I think that is very important as well. If we want more farmers to take up the organic farming, for example, that is very important. And then, of course, we went as well to the conditionality and make this, after now almost 3 years of experience under the current agriculture policy, see what is working well and what can be enhanced. And the changes on the conditionality touch mainly about that as well.
Still, I mean, we're talking about changes, and there were also other changes that you were listing before, even from the previous administration. Don't you think that maybe farmers could be a bit lost if you changing rules so many times?
Well, we don't necessarily change the rules in here. I think that is very clear. But for example, let's take grassland, for example, because currently, if the grassland is there for more than 5 years, it will become permanent grassland, and then it will be a devaluation of this farmland, because they can't use it in arable land again. What the farmers are doing then after 4 years and something, they are plowing around in order to preserve this status. And now we're extending this to 7 years. This makes, in a crop rotation agronomic point of view, makes way more sense. And for me, it is more valuable if the grass stays for 7 years than if it stays only for 5 years. So there's even an environmental progress to be seen there as well. It is the applicability that changes. So we are not changing something fundamentally, because you are right. I think if we change too drastically the rules, even after every single reform, this is not giving predictability to farmers. And if they don't have predictability, they will not invest. And that is what we currently see. And the EIB has identified this investment gap and evaluated up to 62 billion euros. And that is a huge amount of money, because if we don't invest anymore, we will not have the newest technologies. We will not have the progress as well when it comes to environmental deliverables. And that is something we need really to gap this bridge this gap. Sorry.
It's not only about farmers, because you said in the press conference something that I remember, and it's like you asked the member state to help me to help you, and in a sense, not most, but many measures in the package are actually directed toward national administrators. So what's also
some of them, yes, but we have made an evaluation. What is this bringing as a benefit to farmers? It will cut down the administrative burden for our farming community by 1.58 billion annually that they will save on money.
Commission estimates.
That's a Commission estimate, right? And it will cut indeed as well for the national administrations by 210 million a year. So it's benefiting both, but of course way more to farmers. But there were some things in, for example, this annual performance clearance for the national administrations. I don't see any added value for that, because anyhow we have the control of the spending of our money. Those systems work. This is another overlap that is just a burden for the administrations. If the administrations have more time to take care of their constituents, which are who are the farmers, well, then it's as well in the interest of the farmers.
Let's talk about the most controversial aspect. This backtracking on environmental ambition. You don't
I
agree
don't
with that?
agree at all, no.
Yeah, okay. But it's true that some critics say that the EU may be backtracking from the green commitment, although the Commission position is different because you're saying that it's not like this. Can you explain this?
Well, I mentioned to you the example of the permanent grassland. I think we are even making an environmental progress less than a backtracking. When we go, for example, to GAEC 2, when it comes to wetlands and peatlands, we are just saying if there is national legislation in place, that has the same effect of protecting wetland and peatland, well then this overlap is not necessary. So this is just cutting an overlap and not the ambition.
What it used to be called subsidiarity. So basically, we are applying the national rules when we're applying the EU rules only when the national rules is not there, basically.
But the ambition remains the same, and I think that is very important. But what those critics try to interpret in there is that we have currently, when a member state is changing its national strategic plan, it needs to notify this to the Commission, and the Commission needs to approve it. Now we say if it's a minor change, it only needs to be notified, and if it is not in line and the Commission deems it is still a significant strategic change of the strategic plan, well, then we intervene and we have 30 days to react to that. If it is really a systematic change of the national strategic plan, then we still need to approve. So there's in principle nothing changing. We just give the member states the possibility that if it's really a minor change, to deliver this quickly to the farming community without these long delays. This is less burdensome as well, and this will deliver results quicker to our farmers, and that is our duty.
This is, of course, just a proposal. There's going to be a legislative process. Even if the Commission hasn't foreseen the removal of this conditionality, do you see at the moment the risk for MEPs or the minister to decrease, to basically change the proposal in a way to decrease the green ambition?
I think that this should not be our ambition. We have here, because farmers as well are not saying that the environmental ambition is not necessary, because farmers are the first victims of climate change, for example, but I believe as well they are our best line of defense against climate change, biodiversity loss. So I think we have to use farmers in a better manner, take them on board rather than just to apply top down. So that is why we are shifting as well to more incentive based, and this is already a little bit an outlook what we want to do with the next common agriculture policy reform, that we go more into incentives, more tailored approach, more territorial approach, and less top down, because that we have seen that has caused a lot of resistance. So I think we have even if the objectives remain the same, we need to deliver better than we have done in the past.
So if you want to convince in one or two sentences the critics that the green ambition is still there for the Commission, what are you going to say?
Well, I give them the example of the grassland, where we are even going further, and then the equivalences that we are taking here without lowering the ambitions. I think that is very clearly, we are just cutting on administrative burden. For me, it is very important that we maintain the ambition as well for the acceptance of the society of the common agriculture policy. We need to continue to deliver. That is my clear aim. I, of course, hope as well that the co-legislators will now act swiftly. The member states wanted to go way further as well in the parliament. Some wanted to go further, some wanted to go less. But I think what is important is here we change what is really causing problems without lowering the ambition and with guaranteeing still predictability to our farmers. That will be key, and that is what we tried to balance in this proposal.
There's also much more than that in the proposal. There's also something on digitalization, competitiveness.
Risk management, very important.
Risk management, indeed. On digitalization, of course, this is not something happening overnight. There's a roadmap. There's this report once, used multiple times. Can you say something relevant on the digitalization aspect that you want to highlight in particular?
Well, I think it is very important that we reduce as well the stress for our farmers, because currently it depends on the member state. They are facing 5, 6, 7 controls in a year.
Yeah.
And that is causing a huge stress to our farmers, and therefore we want as well to reduce these controls. And there the member states are as well to deliver. We want to reduce this to 1 control per year. We are still speaking about public money, so there needs to be control. But on the other hand, we have to reduce this, and that is why we are introducing this digital solutions as well. I would even go a step further, because we are speaking about a digital wallet for companies in general, where you have all your administrative stuff in, and the administration can go and pick it there. And that is what the once delivered multiple times used principle. So I have my, as a farm, my digital wallet, and if the water administration needs to know something from my land, they can take it out of that. If the environmental agency needs to know something, they can take it. If the agriculture administration, so that is the aim of that. And I think member states are sometimes a little bit reluctant, because they say farmers are not able to deal with that. And I say, come on. Farmers are multi-talents because they need to have the financial skills, chemical skills, biological skills, entrepreneurial skills. Let's not take them for more stupid. They are perfectly fine to use these digital tools. So it's sometimes rather the administrations that don't want to change their systems. And I think that is something, the way we need to go forward. To simplify and give the tools into the hands, farmers will know, because they deal with so many things, precision farming, GPS, etc. So they can use this as well perfectly fine.
We'll be talking about the farmers' protest. What do you remember of the farmers' protest? I mean, you weren't a commissioner, but what were your?
But I was around. Huh?
Yeah, of course, of course.
No,
this is the exclusive of today. You were already thinking of coming back as commissioner.
Yeah,
no. He said yes.
It was a dream, but sometimes dreams come true. No, but of course, from the protests, there are 3 main requests by the farming community that I always keep in mind. Fairer prices for their products. We are trying to deliver now with the 2 proposals on the Unfair Trading Practices Directive and the Common Markets Organization on this price aspect, in order to strengthen the farmer's position in the value chain. They ask about more reciprocity when it comes, because they feel an unfair competition towards third countries. And we are, when it comes to plant protection products, we are very quick to take off active substance from the market, but we are very slow on delivering the alternatives for various reasons, authorization procedures that need to be done member state by member state. And that is very striking, because I spoke to a startup in biopesticides, and they told me, well, we are going to the United States. I said, why? Well, in the United States, we are done in less than 12 months. In Europe, it takes 5 to 8 years. We are bankrupt by the moment we go to the market, and then it is.
And you felt guilty as commissioner.
No, well, that is not my responsibility. It is in the portfolio.
Yeah, that's true.
Oliver Varelli, of course, but nonetheless, I think that is very important too. And then as well, if we ban a product in the European Union for good reasons, because it is a threat to human health, to pollinators, etc., and it is scientifically proven, well, then it is as well bad for pollinators and for human health outside the European Union. So we have to be stricter when products come in that are treated with products that we have banned from the market. And that is something neither the farmers understand it, why this is still happening, nor the consumers. And there we will need to be quicker. And then, of course, the administrative burden. I think that was the biggest one. And that comes as well from our survey. The administrative burden and the stress with that is the biggest one we need to.
When you started your mandate, you said, I'm gonna travel Europe, and you're actually doing. You're visiting farms. You've just been coming. I mean, you're coming from your home country, from Luxembourg.
Yesterday I was in my own country. Yes, I had an audience. I had an audience with the Grand Duke yesterday.
Exactly. What did you talk about? The Eurovision. It's a very good Luxembourg entry this year in Eurovision.
Yeah. No, I will not speak about music now. No, the Grand Duke was very much interested in agriculture policy and had as well concern about generation renewal. But I went as well to see a young Luxembourgish wine grower and a Luxembourgish beef producer. So that
And from this, and this is the very last question, from these visits that you're doing to different farms, how you're planning to shape, because this is your main task for this mandate, the next common agricultural policy. What are the feedback that you're getting from farmers on the ground from your visits? So how you gonna transpose what you're getting into the, what are the main, if you can anticipate, aspects?
I will draw the conclusions when I visited them all, because what I can already say now, we have a highly diverse and a highly rich agriculture, and it's really very different, even in one single member state from region to region. That is very important. I am now at 14 member states. By the end of the next week, I will be at 16. So the 27 will be done this year. So it is very important to get
Get a leak on the common agricultural policy. We need you to finish the tour, basically.
Yeah, no, I will have the tour done, because
But your idea for the next common agricultural policy is more or less, if you can describe it in one word or two.
It will be a continuity, but it will be enhanced. So I think we have that's what I said at the press conference, rather an evolution like a revolution, because there is, I think the common agriculture policy has done its proof to comply as well with the treaty obligations over the last decades. And therefore, some are asking, you have to plow everything around and start from scrap. But the farmers have done as well investments. And those investments are not for 7 years, they are for 15, 20, 25 years. And therefore, I think it is important to take this into account, these investments, and not throw everything overboard there. But there is evolution that can be done. What is important is as well that we target the still limited amount of money that we have better to those most at need. People ask me who is most at need. I say clearly small and family
Beautiful
farms.
Yeah.
I say the next generation of farmers. I say as well regions with natural constraints, because we want to maintain agriculture in all our European regions. So these are the key aspects. And also what I learned a little bit as well during my 14 member states so far, the agriculture has not only the dimension of food security and sovereignty. It has as well a strong dimension when it comes to energy security. I see a lot of farmers already doing biogas and so on. But there is a huge potential we need to tap in, especially since we are considering that we are so heavily dependent on imports. And then when I travel to Finland and to the 3 Baltic countries, it has a very strong physical security dimension as well, because what would be in those border regions to Russia? Finland, I see representative from Finland here, has 1,340 kilometers of common border with Russia. And the situation is similar in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. What would be in those border regions without agriculture, without forestry, without the entire economy around the sector, the infrastructure in those rural areas? There would be not much left. And this would represent as well a huge vulnerability to our physical security. In this geopolitical context, I think this is very important to mention, and we need to maintain a coverage in all our regions.
So the next common agricultural policy will embrace all the multi-dimensionality of agriculture.
We will have a very territorial approach.
Okay, thanks again, Commissioner Christoph Hansen. You can enjoy your working routine when you come back. I mean, rest a bit sometimes. So
yeah, sometimes I do that.
There's way much more than just work. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks again. So now there's a presentation of this study that IPSOS done, commissioned by CropLife Europe. We have Damian Barnier to present it. I had a sneak peek already at it. It's very interesting. And there's an interesting question at the at the beginning of the presentation. It is basically, are farmers feel better now, or are they still on the verge of protest again? So Damian will introduce this study to us. Thanks.
So thanks for inviting me today. So I'm Damien Bernier, and I'm head of department head for agriculture's division in IPSOS. And I will present today, well, this is really a quite quick overview of the survey we made among the European farmers very recently. This was made in March, so that's really coming 1 year after the 2024 protests. And that's also a way to introduce this point, is to see, well, the three key messages. So we have a short introduction on the methodology, and then we will see, well, what is the vision of the past from the farmers' point of view. Well, they have a high participation, but a bit disappointing in terms of impact to the farmer standpoint. Also, well, today, what they face of key challenges, especially on the economical situation, and then how to move forward with new action, new priorities for them in the futures, and try to get more economical support, more simplification as well. Yeah, and then we will conclude with it very quickly. Yeah. So just to remind you on the approach we made, so we bring actually the voice of the farmers to life with this survey, especially to understand the key challenges. Actually, what is the impact of this protest? Is it already handled by recent action by the EU authorities, or is there a new movement coming in the futures? That's also an option. Yeah. And then just to remind you of the robust sample we use, we interview roughly 2,000 farmers in Europe, in 9 countries, especially. You got France, Germany, Spain, Italy, Poland, Romania, Ireland, Belgium, and the Netherlands. So this was really large scope. And we were representative of every country, every region in terms of farm size, farmers' age, country weight as well, and also we have a weighted sample in terms of acreage as well. Yeah. So the field work was made through online interviews, and we made the survey in March till April the 3rd, yeah, in 2025. So what we could see as well, the first looking in the mirror of the farmers, looking back in the protests, which was made in 2024, actually early 2024, we have seen that there were actually a very high participation levels, and that was well, that was the first interesting point, is that there were some difference between countries, and there were 3 countries especially more involved. This was Spain, Germany, and the Netherlands. So they were a bit higher than the 50% participation level. And we have on the bottom side Ireland, Italy, and France as well. We were more less participating in this action. And also we look at some of the length of the protests and how they were mobilized, and they were, for some of them, 50% of the people engaged, they were protesting for less than a week, and also 30% of the farmers, they engaged for more than 2 weeks in this action. Yeah. Then if we just try now to understand how they see the impact, actually, how the farmers well, see the impact of this action, well, there is mixed feelings, actually. And that's why we see is that there is a great impact, great effect on the population, and especially the public opinion, because they see that, well, this improves the public perception, the profession, how they see the profession and their work, actually. So 40% of people agree on these items, and they feel also heard in the media. So that's a good point as well, and how they are seen by the general population. So that's where we see that there is a very good and positive action, and where there is more mixed feeling is about the level of action from the public authorities, from political standpoint. The fact is that they see less impactful impact in the changing policies in Europe, especially significant action for simplification or also financial compensation or advantage for them. Yeah. So all in all, these mixed feelings actually translate in this course, especially 91% of the farmers consider that, well, they were not satisfied with this action taken by the political authorities today. So that's a great impact for them. Yeah. So now, if we try to better understand what are the situation today, so there are also some key challenges as well. Especially, well, we ask them two simply questions, and we follow this question for some other barometers, but that's interesting to see that about 1/2 of the farmers consider that today they are quite pessimistic on their current context and the activity, the situation of their farm. That's something which is very striking as well. And also, if we try to, project more in the futures, they are also not so confident in the futures. Actually, as a farmers, 51% they are pessimistic on their futures. And if we go now more concretely in the difficulties they face, well, especially that's really linked to the economical aspects, especially when we look at the two first items, increasing the input prices or expenses. This is the first key challenges and key difficulties for them, 41%. Same for the level of their products. Actually, the product prices, selling prices for their product, 40% are very worried on it. And coming third is on the bureaucratic administrative constraint, the workload, 34%. The regulation as well, 31%. And then the climate change is coming at the fifth rank, 26%. So that's the key priorities for them, the key difficulties they have today, and that's something which is really, really stressful for them. And so how to get the farmers back to their feet, that's a key question we ask also to the farmers, what they could envision for the futures, and how they could get more economical support and process simplification especially. Yeah. So that was the key priorities for them. So we asked them, some key questions on the type of support they could get from the European Union. Actually, that was the question we asked. And this is structures in 5 key topics. This is especially economical support and redistribution as well, the regulatory and administrative simplification. Then you get the innovation and research topics, and also coming just behind the improvement or the maintenance of the crop protection toolbox. And at a lower level, you've got the communication actions, which is less expected. But if we go more in details on each topic, you see that there are some key scores, because we asked them for economical supports, what do you mean by this? Well, we need a better redistribution of the margins. We need to get lower level of taxes, easier access to subsidies as well. So that's the key aspect in the economical supports that they expect also. In terms of administrative workload, this is especially to get more simplification, relax also the quality standards. That's the two options as well, and also for the R&D topics, help to cope with the climate events. That's a key aspect also. Refocus research and support on digital uptake as well. Yeah. And so in the CP toolbox, this is to maintain access to the CP and facilitate also, so improve also the access to the toolbox as well. Yeah. So actually, if all these priorities could be taken into action, that could be a good point. But actually, also some of the farmers, they consider that they could start again the protest. That's an option as well. We asked them how they would be likely to start again this protest. And if you remember at the very beginning of the presentation, I said that this was 50% of people, of the farmers who made the protest last year, and then for next year this could be 55%. So that could be higher than this, and especially Spain, Poland, Italian farmers would be more mobilized, less involved, Belgium, Romania, and Germany as well. Yeah. And just to note that there could be also newcomers. If we look at this last score, 79% of the farmers already involved would be ready to start again. So this means that 21% of the people are newcomers and will be ready to start this protest in the future. And the other risk also, which is really concrete for the farmers, is that for some of them, they will be ready to quit actually their activities. 22% of the European farmers declare the scores as well, and especially the older people, farmers age 55 years old and more, would be more likely to quit these activities. And this is true that for some of the countries, especially for France, for instance, there is a lot of people and farmers ready to retire actually of the activities. So that's the risk as well, which could be coming in the next years. So as a conclusions, just to remind you the key messages that we present and how we could translate. Actually, that's what the farmers expect. This is an urgent need for the EU to act on farmers' key demands. And well, the EU commissioners explain the great plan that will be taken now in action. So that's a good aspect. And just to remind you of the key messages and the key findings, there is a high involvement of the farmers for the last year's protests. That's what we expect, 50% of participation rate with limited impact. That's what they express also, not concrete action on the profession actually, except for the public opinion. I would say improvement, but there are still dissatisfied by the political actions. And so when we look more today on the economical challenges they have, especially they are pessimistic on their futures, and the economic points come as the first level, and then they see that the situation is worse than last year's. That's what they express also in this survey. Yeah. And so the last aspect is more for the futures and what they expect from the public authorities as well, political and European Union especially. They will need more economical support. They will get a lighter administration workload. That's what they expect also. Develop the R&D also, and then maintain the CP toolbox. That's all they expect from it. And this action, would it be or not taken? The fact is that they would be ready to protest again if this not happen, as they said, 20% also ready to quit farming in the next 5 years. Yeah. So thanks for your attention. And I think there is another discussion coming just after this.
Presentation, thanks. So yeah, we're gonna move to the next panel now, but of course we need some technical arrangements. Thanks for the presentation. When you said that protests could actually be popping up again, I was seeing people worried here because, of course, every time it happens, we have trains to catch, and so that was a bit intense. That part for sure. But you actually got the main thing, which is basically lots of farmers are quitting their jobs because of the current situation. It's their livelihood is at stake, as I was saying at the beginning. So we move to the next panel now. So we're gonna discuss about what the commissioner said, but also other important aspect of what's the situation now after 1 year after the protests. And I'm gonna call to join me on stage our panelist Jens Hartmann from CropLife Europe chair. Please join me. They told me about this position, but I just remember that Ellie needs to be here, but you can sit there. And then I have Théo Paquet from EB. Thanks for joining us. He's a senior policy officer for agriculture, of course. And then Eli Tsiforu from Copa-Cogeca, Secretary General from Copa-Cogeca. Thanks for being with us. So we made it. of course, I mean, I see many journalists in the room, and in general, when there's something to report on, we always try to get some reaction, and this is the ideal reaction table. So we have Coppa Congeca EB and Crop Life. So I'm gonna simplify the work of my colleagues by asking you a reactions on this simplification package, so that tomorrow they can actually fill their newsletters or articles thanks to this event. So I'm gonna start from Ellie. A reaction from this simplification package. What were the things that you highlight? First of all, did you like it or not?
Listen, we need to talk with our members. Copa and Cogeca is a big democratic organization, so for anything that we do, we take the opinion and the views of our members. What I could say is that we participated very actively, we contributed to the work of the Commission, so one first thing we will do is to see if our requests were taken on board, which of them were taken on board, if they were not taken, why, and to follow the process. Per se, the simplification exercise is viewed as positive by our community. It's a key request. It's a long-standing request. I believe we saw it also as one of the key asks during the protests, a very legitimate request. We all feel, I mean, those who are involved with farmers, and we interact with farmers every day in Copa and Cogeca, they are our members. There is this, I mean, they are overwhelmed with administrative burden. They are overwhelmed with legislation, so there is the CAP, but there is also the beyond the CAP, and I believe there will be more to come on that aspect as well. We see that very often they do not understand, or they have to implement policies that even contradict each other. So this is not at all meaningful for the farmer. So that's why the exercise is positive. Then we need to, it is very technical as well, it is political, but it is very technical, and we need to work on the detail. But I think that we also need to examine and to have in mind what is the root of the problem, and to tackle the problem at its root. And the root of the problem has to do with the fact, well, with many dimensions, but I will start by mentioning the fact that we see an amount of policies that have an impact on our sector, so an overproduction of policies.
Not just agriculture related, you mean?
Yes, but they have to be implemented by farmers. I mean, the last term was exemplary from this point of view. Policies not talking to each other. One of our vice presidents in the previous term, he explained in an opinion piece very well and in detail, he's a breeder, how implementing the IED directive, the nature restoration and the deforestation was completely nonsense in his holding, because the policies were not coherent. So we need, before we start introducing a policy, before designing a policy, to be certain about how it is going to be meaningful and implementable from the actors that are on the field. And to do this, we need to have a very, I mean, thorough consultation process.
So not just the strategic dialogue.
Yes, well, the strategic dialogue had its utility and its value, but we need to do a lot more. We need to be more pragmatic. One thing that is not often discussed, and I felt it because before taking this role, I was working for a national member organization, interacting with farmers on the is that, well, we had COVID in the previous reform, which affected the overall consultation exercise. But if the Commission people are not traveling to the member states to explain the policies, to interact with the farmers, this creates a lot of distance between how the policies are designed here and what are the realities on the spot. And we see less and less representatives of the institutions, especially from the Commission, traveling and being there to interact with farmers. In the last reform, I did it with my organization. Not even one Commission officer was there to explain. And this is an exercise which is useful because and very meaningful. You see at the beginning the reluctance, and then you see as the discussion goes that there is an understanding, a building of understanding. So it is a quite complex question.
So your recipe is more presence in the member state from Commission,
Absolutely,
and then
absolutely.
consistency among policies,
Coherent policies.
and then less legislation, because you said that.
Yes, before we introduce a new idea, and there are a lot of bright people in the commission and in the bubble, before introducing a bright idea, we should make a reality check about how this idea is going to be implemented on the ground, to be sure, to be certain as much as we can. And this is not the case at present.
We're gonna come back on these topics for sure later on, but first from Theo again on this simplification package. You listen to the commissioner, you listen also to Eli. So you want to highlight some points from this package?
So first off, thank you for having me. I completely agree that we need the Commission to be on the grounds more to explain policies, because it's true. There's been a lot of new policies, it's true. We believe that they're necessary, but it's also very important that farmers also understand why they are necessary, and so it's important for the Commission and for member states to really explain this, this to farmers. And also, I think you mentioned the fact that we need better consultation, and I completely agree, and I think it should have also been the case for the simplification package. Both of them had very little consultation from...
You mean ahead the presentation of the proposal?
Sorry?
Like before the presentation?
Before, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, and now going into the actual simplification package, so Commissioner Hansen mentioned a couple of times permanent grassland. On this we agree. It's actually a positive change, because it can let farmers have their prairies for longer. However, he also did not mention that now farmers are able to mow their permanent grassland at a higher rate than they did before. Before it was 5% compared to the reference year in 2018, now it's 10. So for us, there is a clear backtracking. So we are very happy with simplification. We think it's a valid agenda to have, but it cannot be deregulation. And the second point, and here I'll touch on the wetlands. Indeed, the fact that if you have equivalent national rules, then that's fine if it's at the same level of ambition. So we are okay with this. The main issue we have is that now farmers are able to be paid, and they should be paid for, and there should be more incentives rather than conditions. But now farmers are going to be able to be paid via eco schemes and other environmental measures to do the baseline level of this GAIC, of wetlands and peatland conservation, where we feel farmers should be supported in actually going beyond what is needed. Beyond what is in the regulation. So we feel there was a missed opportunity there, and that member states are going to be able to design eco scheme that really do the bare minimum, rather than the opportunity in designing eco scheme and giving money to farmers for them to really implement real change.
These are all the points that we're gonna discuss, further later. But then again, from Jens, what's your main take on this simplification?
Look, I look at it a little bit from a different angle and try to connect it to what we've seen before in terms of the survey and the outcomes. I think what I found most appreciating is that Commissioner Hansen is walking the talk.
Yep.
No? We've basically seen in the survey earlier on, and congrats to IPSOS, I think you had a good representation of countries, farm types, geographies, crops. There is consistent messaging on the key areas, and he's addressing them. No, we've seen it's a financial situation, it's simplification, and it's a topic of innovation. And he's making the first move now on simplification, and he's doing that in the consultative approach by, for example, also having EBAF in place, where he's bringing in the various stakeholders across the value chain involved in agriculture, and trying to do that together. Of course, we also need to understand the situation he's in, and it will definitely not happen in the first move that all the issues are being addressed, but he's tackling the right issues, and he's said right at the beginning, we need to, I made a note here, we need to make life easier, we need to have fun back at farmers, and that's basically the core to it. How do we make farming again an exciting profession for long-term sustainable livelihood, and he's doing that, and he's doing that pretty fast after he's being in power. So I think from all our angles, the effort needs to be, how can we help the Commission? How can we set the Commission up for success? Be it Copa-Cogeca making suggestions, being the various value chain partners making suggestions, like also CropLife Europe has made suggestions saying, well, if you really want to simplify, these and these and these are low-hanging fruits, and we can address and help you implementing your agenda. So from my point of view, the glass is probably more half full, and a strong encouragement to help the Commission driving the agenda going forward, because ultimately it's about livelihood in agriculture. It's about sustainable regenerative agriculture. Not a single farmer, at least single farmers we haven't met, doesn't want to give his farm to the next generation in a worse conditions than he took it from the previous generation. No? So it's all about sustainability, regen ag, and there the topic of sustainability and the other areas he mentioned are fully supported.
It's a bit of an existential threat for farmers.
Exactly.
This is also something that I was also curious from the presentation to see prices as a higher problem for farmers than the actual regulation, and there was also something that the Commission has done with other simplification, or also in the Common Market Organization when it comes to fairer prices. Are you satisfied from the moves from the Commission when it comes to fairer prices, for instance?
Listen, this is a long-standing issue on which we have been working on for many years. So we have been progressing. We had the UTP's directive a few years ago. There will be a review, from what we understand, by the end of the year. So this will be a peak moment. We had the CMO targeted reform. So these are all positive things and positive moves. But the situation, I mean, the core of the problem, which means that there is a very important lack of transparency and fair distribution of costs and value along the food chain. The problem is still there, and the problem is not only European, it is global. The global farming community faces this issue. If you see the reports of FAO, they state the same issue. And there we have to deal with actors in the chain that are super powerful and very evasive. So you can devise strategies, you can devise measures, but they have the power to go beyond them. So it's not an easy issue. It's at the core of our key concerns, but it is very important that it is in the mind of the Commission, that it is part of the vision looking to 2040. And we look forward to the next step. Now we are working on the CMO, but to the next step, very important step, which is the UTP's directive review.
I'm mentioning this aspect because it's an open one, and as the presentation was saying, the risk is that other products will come, and we know that also that actually Copa-Cogeca is backing a protest next week.
This is true, and this is linked, I will go to the heart of the problem directly, because this is linked to a very important concern at the moment for our community, which has to do with the multi-annual financial framework. So
you're mostly afraid of cuts in the...
It's not the cuts. It's not the cuts. Every time we have the discussion on the MFF, the CAP is always at the heart of the discussion because it absorbs almost 1/3 of the EU budget. So let's say, and let me not be misunderstood in this, we are used to having this debate. And I can develop further on that point. But here, this time, we have another hurdle to tackle before going to how much money is going to be put on the CAP budget. The question is, are we going to have a policy? Are we going to have a CAP? Because we hear there is this idea of the single fund that you must have heard of. So the idea was introduced officially last February. There was a paragraph on the CAP, but we did not see and we don't see yet in a clear way how the CAP is going to be placed and reflected within the MFF. And what we hear, because now the discussions are taking place there, so behind closed doors, and we hear very worrisome scenarios, like we would lose the second pillar of the policy,
The rural development.
the rural development, where you have all the agro-environmental measures, you have the investments on farmers' holdings, you have a set of measures that sustain the growth of the community, its transition. There are social dimensions as well that have to do with rural communities, so a very important part of the policy. We even hear that not even the first pillar that has to do with the direct payments to farmers is secure. So you can imagine that this is a big concern, because we can discuss as long as we want and we wish about simplifying, improving the policy, and this is a policy, we must acknowledge this. It has been there for so long. If it has been there for so long, it means that it has been able to adapt, to take in new requests, farmers' requests, societal requests, so it has an added value. But this is another discussion. Here we have to align and to defend a core common policy of the European Union.
The C in
the commonality of the policy, because if we lose that, the effect, the domino effect would be, it would have dimensions that could hit the heart of what the EU is about, the single market, the stability of the food chain, food security. We would have practically a 27-speed agricultural policy.
Wasn't a bit the issue
EU.
last time, because there was also this renationalization of the common agricultural policy last time. How are you assessing? Because now it's in place.
Let's say that it is pushed to the extreme. Okay.
With
yes,
this
there was
single
indeed.
pot.
Exactly. This is pushed to the extreme.
So basically, instead of having many funds like cohesion, common agricultural policy, horizon, whatever, we only gonna have one single pot and all the funds, many funds from the EU.
And with a few locked, let's say, provisions at EU level, few, and then the member states could have the flexibility to handle the funds.
Which would
yes,
undermine
yes,
the
exactly.
commonality,
Exactly,
let's say.
exactly.
So
And
it would be no longer a new policy, but
Exactly.
the risk is this one. Of course,
This is
I
the
think
risk,
Hansen thinks the contrary, but yeah.
No, Hansen, he has been very clear in advocating for a dedicated CAP budget. So what
Okay.
we are opposing here, okay, we cannot oppose the governance that the Commission is proposing, but what we are opposing and what we are requesting is to keep the integrity of the policy within the single fund, to have it secure, to have a dedicated budget line, adequate, adapted to inflation, because this has been a huge issue during this term. So keeping the policy safe within this new and common within this
So
new
you feel you have an
governance.
ally in the College of the Commissioner on this point?
He has stated it clearly, but our members are concerned because it is the president, it is the college deciding, it is the heads of state that are going to soon convene on the matter. So we are very worried, and that's why we support this first action. We have been vocal, we went even against our principles of work, because we usually don't comment on leaks. And you remember there was a first leak on this idea, and we felt it coming. So we reacted because
You don't comment on it, but you're going to protest on leaks.
It's not a leak now.
Okay.
It's tabled. It's stable.
It's stable, but we
it's
still don't know.
stabled, and we need to react. We need to avoid. We will fully engage in the MFF discussion, but we need to avoid a very negative starting point, because we feel that if we have this on the table, it will not be easy to take it.
So the mood is collaborative, but there are some red flags that, like this one on the next MFF, that
There is a big red flag that you will see rising somewhere here in the European district.
well, many will remember that actually the first I started in 2017. The first protests that I saw from farmers were on the MFF, and they were actually quite big already. Thanks for your points. Everything was quite clear. I just want to ask to Theo and Jens on these environmental aspects in the simplification. So first from Theo, that didn't look that convinced on this environmental aspects of the simplification. You mentioned some guy. Your general take on the backtracking, because Hansen was quite on the defensive, because of course, I mean, it's job. But then, how do you see this shift from green to clean that we're seeing in this commission? And also, not just in terms of environmental aspect or climate change, but also when it comes to biodiversity loss.
So I think
Is
does
working.
it work? Yeah,
I
it's
think
working. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just for the first point, general feeling is not as bad as the first simplification package, which we feel was very strong backtracking. This one we see some backtracking, but also as was mentioned by Commissioner Hansen earlier, there are some perhaps some positives that we can see. Now, I think what's important is that I think we all agree on this. We need to break the stigma that we cannot farm sustainably and be competitive. I think that's something we really need to keep in mind, and that profitability and sustainability, environmental sustainability, are not antagonists. They've never been antagonists. And I think a lot of time we focus very much on the short term, and when it has come to EU agricultural policy, when it has come to, let's say, underground actors as well, the main focus when it comes to agriculture has been on food production. It made sense after the war. That was why the Common Agricultural Policy was created. We live in a different world. We're producing a lot of food, we're exporting a lot of food, but we also have a triple crisis. A crisis in pollution, we have a crisis in biodiversity and nature loss, and we have a crisis in climate change, with farmers being, as you said, the first impacted. So when we're talking, it's very important for me, I think, to really come back to this point, that if farmers want to be able to farm in 20, 30, 40 years, the question of environment, the question of making sure we are not polluting our soils, that we're not degrading our soils, needs to be at the forefront of everyone's mind, because we need farmers to be profitable and to produce food in 2040, 2050.
So I didn't want to comment on this. No.
I want to comment yet, but as you wish. I mean,
Yeah,
you want
go
to-
on.
No, I fully agree 100% with what you said about the economic and the environmental pillar of sustainability not being competitive. And there are ways to do it. There are ways to do it that are much more meaningful and impactful in achieving this balance on behalf of the farming community than setting targets and forcing regulation. Innovation, knowledge. This is the only way we can do it. This is the force that balances the two pillars of sustainability. So on behalf of our community, I mean, the issue has never been doing something against the environment. And then we have to think, I mean, in a very simple way. How can a farmer engage in the transition if he is not profitable, if he's not doing his work, which is producing? This is the work of the farmer, producing and being on the market. And then I also don't agree on a point that has to do with your assessment of the current status quo. We have a big concern about food security. And we have a big concern in order not to have an issue in the EU, because the global context forces us to think this way. So food security is a global issue. We are in a very unstable and uncertain global sphere right now, and we are under threat. And the fact that we, as EU consumers, we are used to have our food on the table, it's not something given. We felt it a bit during the recent crisis, the COVID crisis, etc. It can happen. So that's why we need, before thinking of anything else, to ensure productivity, profitability, and then the path towards the transition is secure only when we provide farmers with enough adequate solutions in terms of knowledge and innovation.
So basically the main divide between the two of you is that for Theo, environmental aspects are still the priority. for you is more like the, let's say, aspects related to
It shouldn't be
food
set
security.
as a
But then in terms of
forced,
priority.
yes, the priority is there, and I don't think that currently we don't see the Commission having the priority. The priority is there. What is not there, thankfully, is this top-down forced approach of a mass of regulation that wanted to impose the transition to the community. And it backfired because we are the ones that are going to implement it on the ground. If it's not meaningful, if it's not implementable, it will not be done. So we need to find a proper way to do it. So the objectives is there. We are looking to the objectives.
But
And-
and Ellie, just adding on what you're saying and fully agreeing there, I think we heard it all early on also from Commissioner Hansen, no? That he basically said it has to go hand in hand, sustainability and profitability, that the thinking processes around CAP to move more towards an incentivization. No, but starting point, fully agreed, is you need a profitable farming operation. And you need to have also clarity on future, because I heard that also earlier on, Hansen saying, well, we can't change things too dramatically overnight because you have that long-term clarity on where does it take us. On the other hand side, he also addressed, which you said just now, Eli, key driver of sustainability / linked with productivity is innovation. And we need to keep on driving that full toolbox and start also appreciating and recognizing that on the one hand side, we can't over-regulate and deplete a toolbox whilst we are not in a position to provide alternative solutions. And very interestingly, what I found him quoting the startup example, it's not only about the farmers, which are of course at the center of everything we do. But if we, for example, realize that because of the legal framework and so on, the whole innovation capital for biologics, for example, moves to the US, like we have seen with biotechnology, we also have mid to long-term potentially the challenge of to what extent is the innovation really then tailored towards farming practices in Europe. And if you look at the farming practices here, which is very much around fruits and vegetables, horticulture, it's different to the big row crops you have in the Americas, where it's more about corn and soy. So in order to drive that attractiveness for farming, we also, through legislation and simplification, need to make sure that the respective value chain, not only downstream, but also upstream.
You're saying that the predictability should be addressed
It's taken
not
a
just
lot.
on the farmer side, but in general, the whole
Exactly.
agriculture sector. And when it comes to the priority, since both Ellie and Theo actually,
Just
Theo
on
have
this,
the right
I
of
don't think I
reply.
don't think I would put environment
Okay.
above farmers. I think they're both there. I would not put one above the other.
Okay.
For me, it's just that they cannot be profitable in a world where we're losing soil. Like 60 to 70% of soils in Europe are in poor health. So for me, they're not one above the other. It's just that they both need each other to actually thrive.
Okay.
Just
No,
to
absolutely. Jens, your priority, your order of importance when it comes to the main topics, food sovereignty, environmental aspects. What would you put at the
Well, I think a starting point, also we heard this before, I think, Ellie, you made that point, is the food security.
food security?
That's the starting point because it drives then also the food production, drives the profitability of farmers, and you put everything else as on top. So it's basically addressing this almost like in parallel. You address the financial situation of farmers, you make their life easier, and you provide the constant toolbox and innovation going forward.
But what about the argument that, of course, food security also depends on environmental aspects, the biodiversity laws, as Theo was mentioning?
It's not an either or. I think that can go very well in parallel and hand in hand.
Can I just
But-
touch on that food security point? I'm just curious to hear your point of view because, I mean, we're talking a lot about food security. I mean, all the time we're talking about food security now, and it's critical, and we're in a situation globally which requires us to think about it. But a large portion of the feed that we have is imported. We have a massive dependence on imports for feed and for fertilizers. So I'm just trying to understand, and we have only a certain amount of land in Europe. I'm trying to understand how you become secure in our food production when we have so much livestock in Europe, in certain areas more than in others. And how do you square that circle?
Ellie, this is clearly a question to you.
I was ready for it. I was expecting it. You said the magic word, livestock. But let me tackle first the, the strategic autonomy, this is what you are referring to, is interlinked with food security. So this is also in the minds of the Commission, rightfully so. And it's true that in certain key sectors we have dependencies and we need to reduce these dependencies. And I think that we will soon have proposals towards this direction as well.
Just one pencil
Yes,
by the
yes,
Commission.
exactly. And it will be a very important moment. Then, when it comes to the livestock, and I think the strategic dialogue there, I mean, there was no question that there needs to be any reduction of livestock in the EU. And we need to see livestock in the big picture, because I fear that on many topics we discuss in a very simplistic and targeted way, and we lose the complexity of agriculture as a whole. It's a complex biological system, it interacts, and if you remove one piece, then the others will fall. Livestock is key for the environmental aspects that you defend. It's key as well for rural areas. It's key for the landscapes. So let's go further in this discussion. Of course, the sustainability question is there, as for all the sectors. But we can do it in a positive way without introducing these ideas that we need to reduce. And we need to see what is going also what is taking place in other parts of the globe, and acknowledge the progress that has been made at EU level. So let's have a positive narrative. I believe a positive narrative is there also in the vision, in the work strand that is foreseen by the Commission. Let's work in this direction.
It's something that it's popping up a bit, this thing that we see. We also have to see what's happening around the globe, because Hansen was mentioning about the competitiveness with in biotech. So I don't know what's your approach on how to consider what's happening around. So what would be the good approach for because it's something that you can't really control in a sense.
Yes and no. I mean, of course, you cannot control, but you can think and act strategically. And this is what we ask from the Commission. When it comes to trade, let me take directly the Mercosur question, which is exemplary.
We have a list of controversial topics.
Yes, yes. Let's not be afraid to, because we have a very clear view on this. And let me mention, and this is quite impressive, that this is the only trade deal that COPA-COGECA, in its long history, starting from the 50s, has opposed unanimously, aligned. And why is that? And I think you all understand that in all our national organizations, the members, they have both offensive and defensive interests, but they took a strategic decision. Why is that? It's because we cannot view trade in silos. We have to see the cumulative impact of trade. And when you see the defensive sectors in Mercosur, the same sectors receive a lot of pressure from Ukraine. They will receive further pressure from Thailand. And you know that the Commission is speeding up the processes of concluding the deal with Thailand. So what we ask
They're also not concluding the deal with Ukraine.
Yes, but it will come. There are reasons we can discuss about that. But we need to see the cumulative impact, and we fear that we lead certain sectors to extinction. So this is one key ask, and then the reciprocity. What we see in this case is a great divergence of standards. I mean, it's day and night. It is too far. We are too far. The sustainability commitments are too weak. are too weak. So we cannot accept a deal that is designed in this way. We did the work very positively with New Zealand. We had a very important sustainability part in this deal. So I think we can do much better. And then a third dimension of trade has to do with the fact that we see very often our sector treated as a bargaining chip in...
Yeah, during the trade negotiation.
Exactly. Vehicles,
Yeah.
other stories, other sectors, and then we pay the price, and we fall victims of our success because the agri-food sector, to which our community contributes a lot, we are the starting point, is a success story for the EU. And what are
Sometimes it's also a good way to negotiate. There's this kind of geographical indication diplomacy when you start negotiating with some countries by recognizing geographical indication.
Of course, but then having a retaliation on us because of, in the case of China, so with the measures there, and then now on the US, what we are saying to the Commission is use the diplomacy and keep our sector out of it.
And since we were mentioning, actually Jens mentioned innovation. It was also something touched on by the simplification package. People still think when it comes to innovation in agriculture of the farmer using the drone or whatever. But you were mentioning, for instance, biotech. How big is the as I said, the tools that the farmers could have? So how would you frame the innovation issue when it comes to agriculture?
Look, I think Hansen said it before, and Ellie, you know this better than anybody else here in the room. The farmers are the biggest entrepreneurs we have on life. And if there is one group who's taking up innovation, if it really makes your life easier, or if it does a certain job, then it's been done. Yeah, and be it digitalization, be it biologics, or be it in other areas. Whenever a farmer sees an improvement in the outcome compared to what he has been doing before, he's taking up that innovation. No, so from that point of view, I think it's our task over here to ensure, again, that end-to-end innovative toolbox is available. And that brings us back to what we have been talking from the beginning. It's, on the one hand side, establish or enable that simplified regulatory framework. And then on the other hand side, also ensure that you have a complete toolbox to bring, have accessible to our farming community. But in general, and that's what also liked with Hansen saying at the beginning, we need to keep on making farming attractive to attract the next generation of farmers also to continue their forefathers' work. And that younger generation automatically is also more prone towards new innovation coming in, such as digitalization. So it's all intrinsically interlinked and having a positive impact on agriculture.
There's also this social aspect there of not just generational renewal, but keeping this profession alive. I don't know what's your take on this aspect.
I mean, obviously, we don't represent farmers, but I mean, for us, when it comes to generational renewal, it's often about land price, and that's often has been driven by the prices have been driven up by the cap, sorry, a lot of times because of hectare-based payments. This has driven the price of land up. So for us, I think a starting point is ensuring that income support that farmers do need, and that was an agreement in strategic dialogue that farmers will keep, at least some farmers, because it needs to be better targeted, will need to keep income support, that this needs to be, let's say, dissociated from only having the hectare metric. Because we need to make sure that young farmers, not just young farmers, new entrants, are able to access land. And this is one of the biggest barriers that they have to actually enter the profession.
There was also some mini simplification package on not access to land, but a new proposal to give 50K lump sum for business development and so on. But this is actually a point. I have to say that there's a good mood in this because I saw Ellie that she didn't agree, but she was very there's this strategic dialogue mood. Let's say that it's actually quite positive. That I want to break now by asking if someone has a question from the audience. Otherwise, I have others. I have others. The controversial one, Andre. It seems not the case. So I actually want to ask both Jens and Theo what Eli was mentioning. So the different sustainable criteria across the world, if this could actually become an issue for competitiveness of farming sector in Europe.
Well, the answer is probably a little bit in the depends area what we refer to in terms of the magnitude and the intensity. I think overall, again, farmers are farming for the short-term financial benefit. They want to have a profitable farming operation, and we saw that in the survey also before. And at the same time, they're also farming in a way to hand over that farm and let the next generation continue farming. So the principles of sustainability apply across the globe, whether you are now working in Europe in specific farms or in other parts of the world, and should not become a matter of competitiveness or not competitiveness.
Yeah. But
I think I would agree because earlier you mentioned the Mercosur. And I think we would agree that anything that we're doing in Europe, it is unfair to put our farmers at a disadvantage against what's being done elsewhere. Obviously, it's extremely complicated to to make sure that the products that are coming in fit the same criteria. But at a minimum, we need to make sure that products that we're not able to use here do not end up on our food that we're importing from outside. I think that would be a starting point. It needs to be an imperative that we cannot be importing products that have, let's say, been produced with products that we actually cannot use in Europe.
Let's do a game. So your wish list for the next common agricultural policy, because we were talking with Hansen before. Of course, he couldn't say that much. But let's start from Ellie. What would be, apart from what you were saying before, the single pot? It's better that it's not going to happen. But what would be your wish list for the next EU farming subsidies program?
Well, it's not only subsidies.
No, clearly.
It's a very, rich and complete and comprehensive package of measures. I will start from the budget. We need an adequate, increased, taking into account inflation budget. This is a meaningful policy. It has clear objectives, environmental, economic, societal, and we need to continue pursuing these objectives. But I think I would say that we need a policy recognizing the great diversity of EU agriculture, not discriminating between sizes and types of farming. I don't think this is the right approach to take things. And the CAP has a lot of mechanisms, and I believe we can think of mechanisms in order to have the small farmers more secure. But opposing small and big farmers and saying that the ones need more and the others they don't need, it is a wrong way to tackle it. And let me mention on this occasion the fact that I think that we forget a bit, because we call it income support. We forget a bit what is the raison d'être of the subsidies. They are a safety net. They are a safety net because farmers, they practice the most risky profession that one can practice. They can work, and with one adverse event, they lose everything. And you know very well that we have this more and more. So there is a meaning there, and it has to be accessible to all farmers. We have to find a way. So no discrimination there. And then a CAP focusing on productivity, on profitability, that will make the farmers confident in tackling all the other aspects.
Theo, what's your wish list?
I mean, I already touched upon the fact that we want to dissociate the, let's say, basic income support from area. We still think, and that was the outcome of the strategic dialogue, that there needs to be a baseline level of income support. As you've mentioned, it's a risky profession. I mean, we're seeing insurances are struggling now to actually pay everything that they need to pay with all the climate events. Then going to the MFF, biodiversity and nature spending within the MFF, it has been spread out in the previous MFF. And what we've seen is that it often competes with climate measures or other alternatives that have, let's say, shorter returns. So what we are asking for is a ring fencing of significant funding for biodiversity, but that would be accessible, of course, also to farmers because they represent a large part of the land that we have in Europe. Obviously, no more harmful subsidies. I mean, that's something that we've been calling for a long time. We've talked about it. We're going to be in a very constrained budget, and we need to make sure that all the money that we're spending is actually delivering on the objectives of the CAP. And then for us, it's very important that there's transition support. Farmers, if they need to shift the model of production, will need to be supported.
In the communication.
Yes, and here we're not just talking about funding, but we're also talking about support in terms of independent advisory services. But it's very important that we don't let farmers handle this transition period on their own. Mm-hmm. And they really need, dedicated funding for this. And this is notably true for the livestock sector, which we mentioned earlier. And then last point, and that's more linked to the environmental schemes. For us, it would be very important that they're more result-based. So we're seeing a space for hybrid schemes where you basically get paid a certain amount just for doing the scheme, just for doing the practices. But if you have good results, you should be able to get paid more. And I think it's also important on this that farmers are able to receive more than just cost incurred. Because if they don't receive more than just cost incurred, it's very hard for them to go further than actually show ambition.
And Jens, your wish list, it doesn't have to be common agriculture policy specific, could also be agriculture.
And it's actually very short. It needs to be outcome based, so in other words, incentivized, driven by incentivization. It needs to be simple, and it needs to really drive innovation, toolbox, and sustainable agriculture.
It's an actual list then, because I mean they were listed, and okay. Apart from the common agricultural policy, you're also looking at, for instance, the Biotech Act, other aspects.
Well, it's more the access to new technologies, and it was interesting earlier on to hear Commissioner Hansen, for example, talking about biofuel. And there again, you get very fast into areas such as NGTs, new genomic technologies, which are actually helpful in terms of driving new cropping patterns, which could be in between classical traditional row crops in the main cropping season, to produce feed for aviation fuel, for example. So we hope that also those policy angles are very much addressed nowadays when it comes to new breeding techniques, for example.
I forgot to ask you, and this is how we're gonna conclude this panel, but your take from the study, if there's something striking for you. I mean, it was about fun, so.
No, I mean, and I need to congratulate you for taking this initiative. It's always good to raise these issues, to raise awareness about the concerns, and I mean the same messages are conveyed from our membership. What I would like to add is another message that didn't came from the farmers themselves, but I think that we received it as a community in the last protest. And this made this last protest quite particular, because let us all remember that they took place in a context where inflation, food inflation, was still very high. So all of us, we paid a lot for our food. And despite that, the citizens in all member states, they welcomed the protests. So they did not blame the farmers for the price they pay. And this goes back to the discussion on the food chain. The EU citizens are fully aware that if there are issues in the food chain, we shouldn't look to the farmer. We should look to the other parts. And I believe this is a very positive take from the last protests.
Theo, your take from this study, but also from the protests?
So I think that's a very good point that you made. And actually, for me, it was I can't remember the value, I think 14 or 17% that are concerned by administration, because we've heard that this is the main issue. And I mean, personally, so my family is from Brittany. We have a farm, a dairy farm there. And I was with my uncle 2 weeks ago. And I actually asked him this question, like, how often do you actually get controlled? How often do you have to do paperwork? And it was not that much, because in terms of control, he said very little. But in terms of the administrative burden, it's actually his cooperative which does it. So I'm actually curious to get maybe a bit more insight on where this number, this 17% number came from, and go a bit more into the details.
Clearly. And Jens, your take on...
Yeah, I commented already at the beginning. I think it's a very, very useful exercise, because ultimately it's a data-driven feedback we get, and it's probably also worthwhile to monitor over time to see if there's any development. What I found, in addition to what we talked about now many times, positive was that, if I remember correctly, the public perception of farming has increased since the protests. And if I remember correctly, at that time also asking in our member companies in CropLife Europe, what is the feedback you get out there? What is the real reason for the farmer protests? A lot was around the fact that farmers themselves don't feel appreciated anymore by society. No? And that I found a very positive feedback from the survey, that seems to have been addressed through the protest, that awareness of we have this challenge out there in terms of agriculture, in terms of our farmers, who do a massively important job for society, whom we just need to show a higher level of appreciation. So in addition to simplification, toolbox, and profitability, I found this a very interesting additional element to the survey as a feedback.
Being proud of being a farmer, indeed.
And being seen as an important part of...
After years of, and let's say, an optics that wasn't particularly well seen by the society, or just seen, as you were saying. I think we're just coming to the end of the discussion. It was also a very nice discussion. It's still this strategic dialogue vibe, so it's still a pleasure. I mean, yes, clearly. But thanks again for being with us, Eli, Theo, and Jens. And it also comes to the conclusion of our panel. So this is also for people watching us on YouTube. Thanks for being with us. Of course, keep following Euronews coverage on agriculture, and have a nice evening. Bye.
Thank you.